A statement from the Diocese of Jerusalem following the forced closure of Al Ahli Anglican Hospital in Gaza on July 8, 2024. In the midst of escalating military activity in the old Gaza City area of the Gaza Strip, we are sorry to report that the Al Ali Arab Anglican Hospital has been compelled to close by the Israel Army. Suhaila Tarazi, hospital director, reported that on Sunday, July 7th, between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m., a large amount of firing from drones occurred in the immediate vicinity of the hospital. This was immediately followed by an IDF announcement that the area had been declared a red zone and everyone should immediately evacuate all the buildings, including everyone in the hospital. As a result, all vulnerable people sheltering in the hospital grounds, the staff, and all patients had to leave the safety of the grounds of the hospital. Inevitably, this placed the injured and the sick in great jeopardy. To our great dismay, our hospital is now out of operation at a time when its services are in very significant demand and where injured and sick people have few other options for places to receive urgent medical care. We are also deeply distressed that today, one of our ambulances was fired at en route to the hospital. We currently have no information about the condition of our driver and any patients who are being transported for treatment. Archbishop Hosam Noam, Anglican Archbishop of the Diocese of Jerusalem, has said, "We protest the closure of our hospital in the strongest possible terms. In a time of warfare and great suffering, it is essential that emergency healthcare services are maintained to treat the injured and the dying. We appeal to the Israeli forces to permit us to continue our sacred ministry of medical care and healing. We plead for an end to the targeting of civilians and all vulnerable people and demand all parties agree to an immediate ceasefire." Hello and welcome back to Doctrina et Veritas, quod traditio terratio vigeant. I'm a little upset because I recorded this video previously, but for some reason my microphone wasn't working, so the entire thing was basically in silence. But we're back, and I'm doing it again. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be debunking this video about Israel, who are the indigenous people. And not really a debunking, but like, that they have decent arguments, I guess. Because I've already watched it. I wanted to go into it blind, but now that's just not going to be the case. So, whatever. They have some decent arguments, but they're nonetheless wrong. So, we're going to watch this. It's not by CBN News this time. It's by PragerU, as you can see. So, let's get into it. Full screen. I hate their video player also, by the way.
When we think about indigenous people, we think about their deep roots and long-standing connections to the land they inhabit, often spanning centuries or even millennia. For example, the Chinese from China, the Egyptians are from Egypt, and the Indians are from India. But what about the Jews? Well, the Jews are from Judea, the modern-day land of Israel, where Jewish heritage stretches back over 3,000 years. And like other indigenous people, the connection to the Jewish homeland is an integral part of the Jewish identity. Judaism is not just a religion, but the Jews are also
Actually, if we go
an integral
back,
part of the Jewish identity.
It was the Jewish homeland, which is Israel, was part of their identity inasmuch as they obeyed their God's covenant, which they didn't. So, no covenant, no homeland.
Judaism is not just a religion, but the Jews are also a people with strong ties to the place from which they originated, the ancient land of Israel. The practice of Judaism is directly connected to that land. It celebrates holidays like the harvest time and has prayers that are tied to the seasons in the land of Israel.
Which God doesn't really want us celebrating anymore, so why?
7 crop species, including olives, grapes, wheat, and barley, are cherished in Jewish symbolism because they represent Israel, the land flowing with milk and honey. For centuries, Jews have been saying L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim, or next year in Jerusalem, never forgetting their connection to the land of Israel.
Which
But
doesn't exist.
don't just take my word for it. Historians and archaeologists also point to artifacts and historical writings that prove the connection between the land of Israel and the Jewish people. Hebrew inscriptions have been found on thousands of artifacts dating as far back as the 6th century BC. Hebrew is my mother's tongue. I can read these thousands of years old artifacts.
Actually, so this isn't really a big thing, but no, you can't, because there was Old Hebrew, which used a different writing system from modern day Rabbinic Hebrew. Um, just like how the Latin alphabet used to be the Old Latin alphabet or the Old Italic alphabet, which was basically unintelligible in today's world. Even though it was an old form of the Latin alphabet, we can't really read it today.
In addition to Jewish sources, an Egyptian document dating to approximately 1200 BC mentions a campaign in which an Egyptian ruler says that he has defeated Israel. Israel is no more, the document reads. Probably the worst prophecy ever made about the Jews since, I'm still here. The Hebrew Bible is, of course, more than just a history book, but there's a lot of verified history in it.
And they brought up the Hebrew Bible, trying to justify their ownership of the Holy Land, which is a big mistake, as we'll get into.
The fact that Jerusalem is mentioned 669 times in its pages confirms that the city is central to the Jewish identity. Politically, the land of Israel swapped hands for thousands of years, but it was never anything other than a sovereign Jewish state.
And here is the biggest piece of BS in this entire video. This is just straight up false information, which the right liberals, which is my name for the conservatives, the quote unquote conservatives, this is what they're trying to tell people. It's just straight up not the truth.
Let me say that again. The only sovereign state that ever existed in the land of Israel forever is a Jewish state. The Jewish people have formed 3 nation states in the land of Israel throughout history. The first was the First Commonwealth, ruled by the House of David, and it lasted for more than 4 centuries. Israel was united by King David, and Jerusalem was the capital of that Jewish state.
Again, not really a good counter-argument, but this is a historical inaccuracy. It was not united by David, it was united by Saul. David did expand the kingdom, but I'm not going to go too far into that because it's not really a huge deal.
The first temple, built by King Solomon, was a huge source of Jewish pride. Then the Babylonians conquered the land, exiling most of the Jewish residents to Babylon. In 539 BC,
of
the Jewish residents
Babylonians conquered Israel. Why did they do it? It's because the Israelites were idolaters. So the Israelites disobeyed God's covenant, and therefore they got exiled. Now, God has a new covenant, the one made by Jesus Christ. The Jews are presently disobeying that covenant by disbelieving in Christ. Therefore, they have no entitlement to the Holy Land whatsoever. That's it.
To Babylon. In 539 BC, Persia's King Cyrus conquered Babylon and issued the Cyrus Decree, allowing the Jews to return to Israel. And many did. They rebuilt the country, including the Second Temple in Jerusalem, on the site of the destroyed First Temple. Its western wall is still standing, and today it is the holiest site of the Jewish people. The second Jewish state is often referred to as the Second Commonwealth, later called the Kingdom of Judea, born from the Maccabean revolt against the Greeks. Hello, Hanukkah.
Which is a story that the Jews do not have in their Hebrew so-called scriptures, but the Catholics do. So
it was a time of independence, but it didn't last. In 70 AD, the Romans conquered Jerusalem and burned down the temple, exiling most,
as Jesus predicted, of course,
of the Jewish population and giving the land a new name, Palestina, in order to disconnect the relationship between the Jewish people and their homeland.
Boo-hoo.
After the destruction of the Second Temple, the land of Israel changed hands many times, from the Romans, the Byzantines, the Caliphate, the Crusaders, the Mamluks, the Ottomans, and the British Empire.
Yep, only a sovereign Jewish state. Yep, definitely, right. Yeah, sure.
But it wasn't until the 19th century that the Jewish people's longing to return to their homeland became an existential need because of the rise of murderous anti-Semitism. a movement was born: Zionism, the Jewish people's right to have a state again. Zion, by the way, is just another name for Jerusalem. It's mentioned in the Bible over 100 times. Zionism is a movement for Jewish self-determination in their ancestral land and a Jewish, not an exclusively Jewish, state.
I still don't understand what this means. Jewish, not an exclusively Jewish state. Aight.
Initially, locals welcomed new Jewish immigrants, like my great-grandparents, who brought prosperity to the land, with new cities and agricultural villages called kibbutzim. The people they encountered there included the community of Jews who had never left Israel, known as the Old Yishuv. The Israeli Declaration of Independence ensures equality of social and political rights to all its citizens, regardless of religion, race, or sex.
The real biblical Israel did discriminate based on religion, as they were supposed to. They were supposed to impose Judaism on all the inhabitants therein. So they really don't have a justification based on religion here. And they try to say that religion says that we're supposed to have this land, and then they say, oh, you can practice whatever religion you want. It's like, what? Yeah.
Guaranteeing freedom of religion,
very self-contradictory.
Conscience, language, education, and culture, and pledging to safeguard the holy places of all religions.
Yes, safeguard the holy places by bombing Christian churches and hospitals, Christian and Protestant hospitals and churches, and killing people inside them. But, it's all in the name of defense, right? Yeah. Yeah, ignore the fact that it took place in the Gaza Strip.
Which is what Israel does. Israel doesn't deny anyone else's identity. Of course, there have always been people of non-Jewish identity in the land, including modern Arab Palestinians, who also have ties to the place the Jews celebrate as the land of Israel and the Christians call the Holy Land. But if you support indigenous people's rights, you should also be a Zionist and understand.
Again, conservatives will all despise indigenous people's rights, and celebrate, colonialism and stuff until we get to Zion, and they're all for indigenous people's rights because the Jews are apparently the indigenous people there. It's like, all right, sure, tell that to the thousands of Native Americans that are still living on reservations to this day.
That the Jews are the indigenous people of the land of Israel who never really left. I'm Noah Tishby, author of Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth for Prager University. Thank you for...
All right, so that was a thing. Before we go, there are a few things I want to mention. So, as I said...
Residents?
Yeah, here. Why did the Jews get exiled? Because they violated the covenant, God's covenant. And they are still, to this day, violating the covenant. Therefore, they do not deserve the Holy Land. It's simple as that. And I want to put up some pictures on screen as well. I forgot to do this in the previous recording, but I'm going to remember it this time. So, this first one, it's basically a picture of God's chosen people, which is the Catholic Church, throwing stones at IDF soldiers who were marching into Gaza, or not Gaza, West Bank. And they were, as you can see, they're flying the cross of Jerusalem. It's a very heartwarming image. This was in 2000. And then this next one, I'm just going to read it out. All right, this is a quote by St. Pius X to Theodore Herzl. We are unable to favor this movement. We cannot prevent the Jews from going to Jerusalem, but we can never sanction it. The ground of Jerusalem, if it were not always sacred, has been sanctified by the life of Jesus Christ. As the head of the church, I cannot answer you otherwise. The Jews have not recognized our Lord, therefore we cannot recognize the Jewish people. And so if you come to Palestine and settle your people there, we will be ready with churches and priests to baptize all of you. This was in 1904 by Pope Pius X to Theodore Herzl, the founder of Zionism. So as it says, no Catholic should ever harbor, much less express support for the state of Israel. Just food for thought. So that's all for this video, and bye.